Kia ora koutou. My name is Gareth Haddon. I'm the head of geography at Inglewood High School, and I'm very humbled to be talking to you today because I'm far from an expert in this, unlike all of you, but I'm excited to share with you a little bit about what we're doing at Inglewood High School, specifically at level 2 and level 3 of NCEA this year. So a little bit of background about how GIS fits into NCEA. We have a standard and assessment called spatial analysis, which at year 12 requires the students to comprehensively apply spatial analysis with guidance. And the problem that I posed to them was what part of a chosen conservation area they could choose around New Zealand should we use drones to deploy 1080 poison. And this context I've called drone drop, and it was an assessment for them. In year 13, it's very, very similar. The difference being that the process is with consultation, so there's more emphasis on the students taking ownership of the process. And their question was, what school in a chosen area is best suited to install solar panels for power production? So this one called Power Up was all about them going through a process much more independently to come up with a school in a region of their choice. Now, the rationale for the drone drop assessment was that we've just come off the back of a topic looking at the different perspectives of 1080 use in New Zealand, and the vast majority of the students in the class decided that we as a country should restrict the use of 1080 but not get rid of it completely. So we were looking at how we can use technology to be more efficient with that. This led us to doing some research around criteria, which from a range of different sources gave us a bunch of different things that we wanted to focus on. Some of them were reasonably arbitrary because, of course, the emphasis here is on teaching the students the skills, but it was nonetheless based on the information that we found. So here's an example of a student who chose Egmont National Park, where they've done a little context map here. We've put it into a slide presentation just to meet the requirements of the NCEA assessment. They've chosen the exclusion criteria to be in red, that is zones above 1,000 meters in altitude, which they've filtered out, and put a buffer of 2 kilometers around the road, saying, well, if it's too close to a road, then it's accessible enough to trap by hands. And then we've got inclusion criteria, which the student has put in green on their map. We're looking at tracks, waterways and hut locations where we want to be putting a drone in next to because of the accuracy they provide over the use of helicopters for 1080. And that's what this map here is showing. And then they've chosen a spot based on the inclusion and exclusion criteria, as well as the terrain underneath, which is the orange layer you can see there, where they're identifying that the steeper the terrain, the better suited that area is for using a drone, and it's within the confines of what the technology can currently do. They then drafted up a little letter of recommendation to the Department of Conservation with that. For the Power Up, the rationale was based on the awesome work that Genesis Energy are doing with their School Gem project, getting schools with the solar kit, and also our requirements or our obligations under the Paris Agreement and wanting to be more sustainable with our energy production. The criteria research process for this one was a lot more of a brainstorm, getting the students to be a bit more independent by thinking about the different types of data layers that they could use. And from that, they then chose the area, started to contextualize it a little bit, looking at what is the current situation there. We looked at, this student here has looked at solar radiation, how much is hitting there, the population density, arguing that, well, we want solar generation in places with high pop density because we want to promote it. We want to have a lot of people coming through, driving past, seeing it and thinking, hey, maybe I could do that at home. That was the angle that this student has taken here. And also with that in mind, thinking, well, where's already producing solar? Let's put a buffer around that and say, hey, we want to spread them out a little bit, starting to identify some possible sites, some possible schools I think there's a filter here, schools with 400 or more students, so it's of a sufficient size to afford the roof space. I also got them looking at other tools to develop their spatial awareness, like the NIWA Solar View tool and the shadow mapper here, to get them looking at potential obstructions from the natural and cultural environment that might interfere with the amount of solar radiation hitting the roof of these buildings. The student also looked at sunshine hours, but determined that it wasn't a significant enough range to be a big criteria in their decision-making process. And this is one of the really nice things about this assessment from an educator's point of view, is that they are having to actually explain and justify why they're doing the manipulations that they've done, and also evaluating them, how effective they are in helping to solve their problem, and evaluating the criteria that they've used, which is pretty cool to see that thinking come out. Other use cases for ArcGIS using it across year levels 9 to 13 include Survey 1 to 3, dashboards, story maps, and my current project is figuring my head around drone to map. But of course, the most important thing you could say is what the students are saying, and as you can see here, some pretty powerful feedback from them. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope the rest of the conference is enjoyable for you. Kia ora.